back to the channel. Today I'm going to be starting some more seeds for the season. Today I am mostly going to be starting brassica seeds. So let me go over all of the varieties I'm going to be starting today. And first I'm going to go over the ones that I have grown before. So first off we have a hybrid broccoli called Green Magic. If you're not new around here, you'll know that I have really enjoyed growing this broccoli last year. It did well in the spring and in the fall, so I'm hoping to get 2 crops this year as well. So right now we're going to be starting the spring crop. The other one that I've tried before is a hybrid cauliflower called Bishop. This one I did not have luck in the spring last year, but I kind of got some heads in the fall. Maybe it's a timing thing that I haven't nailed down yet, so I'm going to be doing that again. And then I have a cabbage variety. This is an heirloom variety called kohlrabi. It's kind of like a cone-shaped or ox-heart-shaped cabbage. And this one has grown well for me in the past. So those are the ones that I've grown before and have like somewhat to good success with. Another variety that I've kind of grown before, well I've started it before, is this goji berry. This is a perennial shrub and I grew this a few years ago, and you're not supposed to get fruit until the second year. So it grew really well the first year, but then it didn't winter over for me. So I'm going to be trying it again this year, and we'll see if I can get it to winter over and get fruit next year. So that's the only like not brassica type thing. Then I have some new seeds that I just purchased this year to try out. So first off, I have a hybrid red cabbage called Ruby Perfection. I also have a Chinese cabbage, a hybrid called Rubicon. Then I have an heirloom kohlrabi. This is the white variety. And then lastly, I have some hybrid Brussels sprouts. So those are all the new things I'm going to be trying, and I'm hoping that they turn out well. I'm excited to try those. So just for some reference, right now it's February, and for us we are right at 9 weeks before our estimated last frost date. My plan for these seeds is I am going to be starting them and putting them indoors. They're going to grow there for maybe like 3 to 4 weeks. Then I'm going to start hardening them off for like a week or two, and then at that point we should be at about 1 month before our estimated last frost date, and then I'll start transplanting them into the garden outside, as long as I don't see any temperatures that are going to be like really cold, like in the teens or like in the low 20s. But if we're like maybe in the high 20s to low 30s and still freezing at night, it should be okay for these as long as they're hardened off. They are all cold hardy plants, and they actually like to be grown in the cooler weather. And then hopefully we'll be harvesting maybe around end of May or June. I can't remember quite when I was harvesting the broccoli last year. I think it was around June. And then once those are ready to harvest, I will still have plenty of time to put something in whatever space they're going to be growing in. So I am able to use the garden beds in like this earlier part of the season, and then I can still have space for other things later on. So I am going to be starting these in some seed starting trays. But before we do that, I think I'll just like take you around the garden and show you a little bit of what's going on, some of the projects we've been working on, and some of the prep work that I've been doing. So we've actually been having a warm couple of days. Today it's like in the 60s, and yesterday it was also like 65 degrees and sunny. So one of the things that we have started doing is pruning our fruit trees. And here is one of the fruit trees that we finished pruning yesterday. I'll put kind of like an in-progress photo next to this. I don't know if I took a before photo, but from the in-progress photo you should be able to see how different it looks now. It looks so much better. We've really like shortened the height of it so that it is manageable and taken out a lot of the vegetative growth from last year, and it's just looking really good. So we have finished pruning this apple tree, and there's also another apple tree like kind of there that we pruned as well. And then we have several other fruit trees to prune that we like to work on in the middle of the winter on like a nice warm day. It's nice to do it before your trees start growing again in the spring. It's nice to do it while they're still dormant. So we've just gone in and shortened a lot of these branches. You don't want to cut into any old wood. So I can tell that this was the wood that was 2 years old, and then this was the wood that just grew last year. So we just shortened that to have a few buds. All of the fruit buds will grow on second year wood, so you don't want to cut too much into that. But it is nice to prune your trees in the winter and get them off to a good start so that they can concentrate their energy in the best way possible and not get overcrowded. Here's the pile of trimmings that we have so far. We are eventually, once we get like a big pile going, we're gonna chip all of this, and that's gonna turn into mulch and wood chips for our garden. Here's a quick look at our garlic, which is probably one of the very few things that are actually growing right now. But in the bed behind that, under some cover, I still have my Brussels sprouts plants and cilantro plants, and I'll show you how those are doing. The cilantro is still green and doing really well, so I've been harvesting that and eating it. This is what our Brussels sprouts look like. These are not the Brussels sprouts that I am going to be starting today. This is an heirloom variety called Long Island Improved, and I just haven't had good luck with these Brussels sprouts before. This is the second time I'm growing them, and you can see that they're kind of starting to grow like the little Brussels sprouts on the sides here, but they just don't really make like distinct, tight sprouts. It's just like a lot of leafiness, and it could just be that I don't know like the right timing to grow them. Like maybe, I'm not sure if I need to be growing them in the spring and summer or in the fall. These I planted in the fall and have been going through the winter. They're still looking green, but if the sprouts haven't formed by now, I think that once our weather starts warming up, they're just going to bolt, which is what happened last year. So that's why I'm trying a different variety this year, and I'm hoping that it will do better than this one. And if it doesn't, then it could just be I have to like try a different way or season to grow them in, or just tweak the timing a little bit. But here's how they're looking. Kind of like funny flower rosette shapes here. We've been slowly cleaning up the garden over the winter, so all of our trellises are almost all cleaned off of any old plants from last year. And I'm also starting to get any infrastructure in place that I'm able to do right now. So for example, I just put up these T-posts with this netting yesterday because by this time of year I have worked on my garden plan, and for the most part I know what plants are going to go in each of these beds. So it's nice to be able to plan ahead of time and know what I'll need in order to support these plants. So in this bed I'm planning on growing either green beans that are pole beans or beans that are for dried beans. So this netting is actually floral netting. I've used this in my flower garden before, but it should be strong enough to have peas and beans on it. I probably wouldn't do something heavy like cucumbers or tomatoes, but I think it will work really well for the beans. It's not too tall, it's probably only like 4 feet tall, so I'm hoping that this will be tall enough. But any trellising that I can get in place now, it's good to get it done on these really nice warm winter days. It's nice to just get out in the nice weather, but also just to give a head start because we're going to be busy in the spring. I'm also working in these 2 rows. We had some weed fabric in this row in this pathway before, but it was starting to break down. So you can see back here, I haven't gotten to this part yet, but this is the kind of fabric that we were using, and it was just disintegrating, and the weeds were actually just growing right through it, and it would just rip into little pieces. So I decided it's just time to take it out because it's not really doing any good as far as weed prevention goes, and it was just starting to be a mess with all the ripped pieces. So I am taking this out and I'm going to put fresh weed fabric down. We have some really bad weeds in this area. You can probably see over here all of these like grassy rhizomes. This is all quackgrass that is really bad in this area, so it would be impossible for me to stay on top of weeding it. The rhizomes just grow so deeply into the soil, it is impossible to get them all. So in this area I'm going to be putting some fresh woven weed fabric that should hold up better. And we got a blowtorch this year that I'm going to burn holes into. And I think maybe before that, we'll even come in and like blowtorch all of these weeds just to kill them off. And we're pretty excited to use that actually. It's gonna be really fun just to blowtorch things. So hopefully we'll show that in a video. So yeah, that's pretty much everything that I've been working on. So let's get into the seed starting. For the seeds that I'm starting, I'm going to be using these 4-cell trays, and it was super windy that day, so you can see I'm kind of like holding down all of these cells, and Erin is helping me fill them in. And we're just filling them with normal potting soil that we have moistened. Brassica seeds are super easy to start, and I find that they're not too picky about the soil that they're in, so they don't need anything like super fine. So potting soil should be fine instead of seed starting mix. And I decided to use these cell trays because everything I'm starting, I will basically be starting either 4 plants of each of the varieties or a multiple of 4. Most of them, 4 plants is going to be just fine for just the 2 of us. The only thing I'm planting more of is the broccoli and the cauliflower. So the broccoli, I'm planting 12 of those because we can eat a lot of broccoli fresh, and then whatever we don't eat, I can blanch and freeze and preserve it that way. And then the cauliflower, I think I'm doing 8 of those. But everything else, we're just doing 4 just to have a little bit of it in the spring, because again, a lot of these things I'll be able to grow again in the fall. And in the fall, I'll probably grow more of it than I will in the spring, because I like to save room in the garden for all of the summer things that I need to get in May. So I want to make sure that I don't start more seeds than I actually have space for. Keep in mind that most of these plants will take up quite a bit of space once they're out in the garden. So even though we're starting with less than a full tray of seedlings, I'm planning that all of these plants will take up an entire 2-foot by 24-foot bed, which is quite a long bed. And I'll probably have some overflow, and I'll have to tuck some extra seedlings into other beds as well. So it's good to keep in mind the amount of space that you'll need when you plant these out into the garden later on. For each of these cells, I'm putting 2 to 3 seeds in each of them, and then we're going to cover it with just a tiny little sprinkle of potting soil. And that's all there is to it, just a pretty simple standard seed starting process. After we're done sowing the seeds, the tray is going to go inside, and after the seeds come up, they'll be under grow lights, which will be set to run for 16 hours a day. For the goji berries, I actually just did 1 2-inch pot because I don't think I would need very many plants of those, so I'm just doing the 1, and this is what our finished seedlings look like after we've sown everything. So here's a look at the shelf that the seedlings are going to stay on. I have some LED shop lights here. I don't remember what kind these are, but I just googled like what kind of shop lights you need to use as grow lights. And the front one's not on right now, but I'll turn it on once all of these seeds start sprouting, which should only take like 2 to 3 days. And for these ones, you really shouldn't need a heat mat or any other like heat source unless your house is like super cold. And here's a little update on the onion seeds that I started in a video, I think it was like almost a month ago now. So these are almost 1 month old, and here's how they are looking. I've been trimming them back, so I've kind of trimmed these once, any of the like really tall ones, and you can keep them trimmed to about 3 to 4 inches for the entire time until we are ready to transplant them out. And here you can see the germination difference. You can see that this section, not as many onion seeds came up, and this was an older seed. So you can see that the germination really does go down year after year. And then the thickest patches are the first and third ones, and those are the ones that I bought fresh this year. This seed was a year old, but it came up pretty well. So that's why it's always best to use fresher seed when it comes to onions. This container back here is the leeks and shallots. Oh, and the nice thing with these containers that I use, which are just like these clear old food containers, is that you can see the root development on them, which is pretty cool. You can kind of see all the roots forming down there. It's kind of hard to see with the reflections, but it's nice to be able to kind of like monitor and see how the roots are doing. And you can see how they kind of just like grow straight down. They don't really tangle with each other. So they're really nice and easy to separate later on. And then here is the lemongrass that I also started, and the thyme. So yeah, it'll just be a few days and then these seeds should start sprouting.